According to Al Capone, one of the most notorious criminals of the 1920s, Prohibition has been nothing but trouble. Right before the 1920s, crime rates had reached an all-time high. Some saw alcohol as the source of crime and supported the abolishment of alcohol use in the country. This support led to the Prohibition, an amendment passed banning the manufacturing and selling of alcohol in the United States. Ironically, the rate of crime increased after the new law was introduced, and a new era of crime dawned in the 1920s. When the 18th Amendment and Volstead Act formally defined the restrictions of the Prohibition, legal sources of alcohol nearly diminished. Many law-abiders became lawbreakers simply because they continued to drink the beverage. When the substance was banned, the demand for it outweighed supply and the value of alcohol thus increased. The desire for the forbidden drink was so intense that people were willing to pay high prices for it. Therefore, the prospect of obtaining a steady stream of lucrative profits from illegal sales enticed criminals. Some were greedy and entered the bootlegging business knowing it would yield far more personal income in the year than their previous jobs would over decades. Often, criminals would dilute the drink to increase the quantity and their profits. Criminals and gangs developed more organization because of the economic stability they gained. Also, unemployment, partly due to the closure of alcohol industries, led to more criminals, and the unemployed found jobs in crime syndicates in areas like bookkeeping and law. The rise of organized crime in cities was the demise of smaller street gangs. Before the 1920s, crime was limited to street gangs involved in less notorious activities like theft, prostitution, and gambling. Organized crime profited from illicit activities that were often in great public demand. Bootlegging brought alcohol to buyers who secretly consumed the beverage in clandestine speakeasies. The structure of the groups often included strict membership policies. As money was the ulterior motive of crime, violence erupted between organized crime gangs as they competed for dominion over bootlegging prices. Thus, more homicides and deaths arose, and criminals were often equipped with bulletproof cars or vests. The system transformed crime and involved complex planning and government corruption. This system also included medical care, legal services, and protection from the police. The focus was money, not murder. European immigrants formed ethnic gangs that developed into organized crime networks such as the Mafia. The changing crime of the 1920s allowed for an increase in structure in gangs. The American Mafia was an Italian-American organized crime network most prevalently found in the major cities of New York and Chicago. Mafia had 20 major families ruling it. It was based on strict rules such as commitment for life. The Mafia prospered from successful trade in illicit liquor during the Prohibition era. Following the 1920s, this criminal group expanded, engaging in criminal acts such as loan sharking and prostitution rings. The ability of the Mafia to bribe powerful individuals and groups led to its success. Organized crime evolved because government leaders were skeptical that such complex networks could exist and didn't try to stop them. Later in the century, the government attempted to suppress the growth of the Mafia by using anti-racketeering laws to convict mobsters. Even though it isn't strong today, the Mafia still remains in business in a few areas. The government investigations of organized crime from 1970 to the September 11th attack led to the demise of the Mafia. On the other hand, criminals became filthy rich at times, making millions from their schemes. For example, George Remus created a fake drug company to sell alcohol through a distribution center without getting caught by the government. His elaborate crime involved the bribery of law officials and the employment of thousands of people. Criminals didn't always use all the money in their own lives. Some, like the notorious Al Capone, donated to the community, to movie theaters, and causes such as providing dairy products for children to prevent rickets. He even gave alcohol to the poor. Society often supported criminals because they are a source of much-desired alcohol. Enforcement of the Prohibition received little support from the federal government in terms of money, as less than 3,000 law enforcement officials were designated to the job. Yet to avoid encountering trouble from law enforcement officials, criminals used bribery to gain police and political support. Many criminals would essentially buy the support of prominent societal figures such as the chief of police and mayor. Some even dressed up as police officers. Public enemy number one, Al Capone, is reported to have paid half of Chicago's police force to maintain support. He secured men by voting booths to ensure corrupted politicians stayed in office. In return for his bribe, Chicago's mayor, Big Bill Thomas, opened thousands of speakeasies in the city in 1927. Support for criminals came from law officials reaping fiscal benefits from the crime, but at the same time, fellow officers would be fighting to catch the same criminals. Corruption of power by criminals caused crime to become more prevalent as more people lost respect for the law. Crime is more accepted by society. When people believed they could disobey the law as well, morals such as honesty were degraded. Real businesses in the community also supported criminal organizations. Criminals who brought alcohol were seen as heroes. People felt that criminals' crimes could be justified as actions to satisfy societal needs. People, especially in the North, supported criminals not only because of the alcohol but also their contributions to the community. Like to bribe politicians and police, they had something to gain, but they didn't have the power of the law. Culture at the time portrayed criminals in an alluring light in movies like Scarface. After witnessing gang violence, much of the public sided against criminals, although they weren't opposed to the improvements criminals made to the communities. Also, criminal opponents included women and prohibition supporters who were more active in their opposition of crime that encouraged drinking. Ever since the government stopped ignoring crime that was occurring in the country and enforced laws that would impede its growth. In modern times, high security has decreased the rate of crime. The prevalence of modern technology has made the public and the government more aware of their surroundings. The media is now able to instantaneously inform the public of global crimes, unlike in the 1920s and later decades when communication of news was slower. Also, advanced forensics has features like digital fingerprinting technology that track crime more efficiently. The government now follows crime more closely than in the past. In fact, the forces of government and crime counteract each other and overall decreases the rate of crime that existed in times like the 1920s.